to accept and convene a congratulations to the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. The decision to host the third annual governance week, focusing on the governance sector, is an important landmark. I hope it will remain an annual event with comparably important focus. Your suggestion that I may be of assistance in addressing what should be done to move ahead is also appreciated, and I shall most certainly attempt to contribute to that objective. Trinidad and Tobago Integrity in Public Life Act, IPLA, came into existence in 1987. It was structured to exercise disciplinary control over the ethical behavior of persons in public life. Its task has been a difficult one, made much more difficult by the failure of the IPLA to provide the authority required for its effective implementation. I shall begin by commenting on the recent report in the Trinidad Express on May 26, 2022, which was headlined, "Integrity Blows for Registrar. Commission criticizes its employees." This immediately raises serious questions for the existing climate within the Commission. The report, which was tabled in Parliament, indicated that thousands of declarations are outstanding, dating as far back as 2014. It described the year 2021 as a tumultuous one because the Commission was seeking to make changes and perform its mandate with a rapidly shrinking budget. It claimed that the Commission, and I quote, found itself in the unenviable position where administrative decisions were being referred to public officials, such as the permanent secretary to the Prime Minister, head of the public service, and the chief personnel officer, unquote. The registrar, on the other hand, adopted the position that the Commission's independence and autonomy only extended to its core functions, compliance and investigation of complaints. Now, it may be helpful at this point to quote what Section 5 of the Integrity in Public Life Act states on the subject of the Commission's independence. And I quote, "In the exercise of its powers and performance of its functions under this Act, the Commission shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority." Now, the question then is, who or what can legitimately negate such clearly spelled out authority? I resigned from the Commission on October 31st, 2014, shortly before the expiration of my term. My decision to do so had been partly influenced by two major controversies, which followed my rejection of challenges to the Commission. One related to a telephone call from the leader of the opposition, who wished to see me on an urgent matter. We never connected until later that afternoon, when my return call reached him on his way to home. He informed me that the matter was still urgent. I suggested he comes to my home, which was nearby. He did so. We met. The matter was addressed within 15 minutes and he left. I reported the meeting the following morning in the 8th memo to my fellow commissioners. The politicians attempted to make a major issue over the fact that the visit was at my home. And finally, they despaired when no one took them on. The other matter related to a serious breach of confidentiality within the Commission from a senior commissioner. It was dealt with appropriately, and this led to proceedings in the High Court. Now I quote two relevant extracts from the judgment of the presiding judge, Justice Corcoran. There require no further comment. I just read them. The first of the extract says, I must confess, now that all the evidence is before me, I could see no reason for the granting of leave in the first place, and am troubled by the lack of candor of the claimant. The second and final extract says, I have found all the submissions made by the claimant unsustainable. The matter was comprehensively dismissed. So that in both instances, the mischief that was intended to weaken the commission, in fact, strengthened it. Even so, there remained widespread criticism of the commission, largely for maintaining its declaration of assets for persons in public life on grounds of intrusiveness and what has been described by many as variations of its wastefulness. But when an institution is failing and the problems are understood, first you identify them and then do what is necessary to fix them. What is certain is that if you continue to do the same thing in the same way, you will continue to get the same result. And that affair is a big part of the commission's problems. I emphasize that the commission today continues to address the mounting problems of its task with yesterday's tools. Its counterparts in New South Wales, Singapore, and Hong Kong, to name a few, also discovered this. They took the required initiatives with excellent results. A classic example of what not to do occurred when the Commission undertook a research consultative exercise to strengthen its call to amend the Integrity in Public Act in 2012. Following wide public consultations, a draft document was produced. With the assistance of the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel, this was formulated into the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2014 and sent to the Attorney General's office for submission to Cabinet and hopefully approval. That year, I repeat, was 2014. To the best of my knowledge, our responses are waited some 8 years later. What might have been achieved if these recommendations had been implemented? I shall read some of the major proposals and leave that assessment to you. 1, the need to establish means for enforcing the provisions of Section 5 and Section 34 of the Act, which give the Commission the power to authorize investigations, summon witnesses, and subpoena persons. 2, the need to give the Commission power of search and seizure as well as arrest, as is done in Hong Kong and New South Wales. 3, Section 32 be amended to include a provision imposing a duty on persons exercising public functions and to report any act in which she suspects any concern or corrupt conduct. 4, such amendments would have effect on disclosure despite any duty of secrecy or other restriction. And 5, to the need to establish provision for protection of whistleblowers. Absence of such a provision is a clear incentive to those who are inclined in no way to come forward. 6. Creation of a system, i.e. arrangements, in order to facilitate the exchange of information between the Board of Inland Revenue, the Police Service, Customs, Immigration, and the Financial Intelligence Unit. This is, of course, to avoid duplication, enhance investigation and cooperation, and facilitate handling of investigations. The Commission also recommended that the Prevention Act be amended and that it be reinforced in the following ways. 7, by making illegal a number of corrupt activities which are not currently captured. And 8, by making provision for the acceptance of a bribe to be an offense, notwithstanding that the purpose of the bribe was not carried out. There are equally important issues that were not included in the Commission's document. One relates to action not taken by the President on more than one occasion, which resulted in the loss of significant productive time. During one 5-year period, the Commission was unable to function for 2 years while it awaited the President's appointment of commissioners. Operations came to a halt. 24 out of 60 months were lost. No work, effort. Loss of respect for the commissioners and the office of the presidency, which is expected to demonstrate the highest levels of efficiency and competence. On another occasion, the action to approve a tribunal was stalled for approximately 1 year while awaiting the President's assent. Again, a total loss of time, money, everything was involved. Circumstances, which led to the resignation of the Deputy Chairman. In doing so, I emphasize that he acted in accordance with the very highest traditions of principled behavior. A newly appointed chairman of the Commission drafted a statement for publication which related to a controversial matter before the Commission. He presented the statement to the Board of Commissioners. The Deputy Chairman, who was also head of the Commission's Investigation Committee, realized that the Chairman's statement was incorrect. He informed the meeting accordingly. His guidance was ignored. They proceeded with voting and the Chairman's statement was approved. The Deputy Chairman, Justice Ventor, who is also a retired judge of the High Court, cautioned, and I quote him, that this was a deliberate attempt to mislead the public. I want no part of that. And he left the meeting. He resigned and retired from the meeting. Another commissioner also resigned for personal reasons. The public statement prepared by the chairman, which referred to an investigation relating to the Prime Minister and other ministers, and which claimed that there were not enough grounds for continuing the investigation. Well, that statement was issued. The matter was closed. And like the burial of Sir John Moore, not a drum was heard. But what does the IPLA say about such behavior?
Hello.
Hello, good
Section 8(2)(e) states, The president may terminate the appointment of a member of the commission when the member is guilty of misbehavior in office. The members of the commission acting in spite of the caution given to them by the deputy chairman misbehave in office in accordance with section 8(2)(e) of the Act. Should their appointments have been terminated by the president? Did the president genuinely fail to understand the importance of having this matter investigated? These are highly sensitive issues which require integrity and courage if decisions are to be respected. Qualities which appear to be sadly missing from the commissioners in these circumstances. But issues of such importance cannot be swept under the carpet, not if we are serious about transformational change and transparency. And now I turn to your invitation on steps that they move the Integrity Commission forward. 1, that Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, under whom the Integrity Commission falls, should be fully briefed on the events of the recent past, including a review of the circumstances surrounding the resignation of the former Deputy Chairman, Justice Chantal. 2, that your board reviews the recommendations proposed in the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill 2014, submitted to government some 8 years ago. If supported, would you add the weight of your organization's voice to call on the government for response? 3, to the widespread objections to the declaration of assets from people in public life, which has caused so much controversy, be tested. Invite 2 very senior accountants, preferably retired and from the private sector, together with the former registrar of the Integrity Commission, to undertake a cost-benefit type exercise of this program. Its value or otherwise must be understood. 4, but once the tumultuous period is stabilized, serious consideration be given to a reintroduction of the Integrity in Schools program. Its growth and teacher support are all there in the records, and they speak for themselves. What needs to be constantly communicated at every level is that integrity is not merely a word, but a way of life. If after all this time the benefits are still negligible, then scrap it and use the funds to reshape an expanded investigative structure. But someone like former Commissioner of Police Silver be invited to review and make recommendations for an effective investigative structure. 6, will the leader of the opposition be included in the process of approval of the chairman of the Integrity Commission? 7, and this is a request to our Prime Minister. Sir, there is much about our Integrity Commission which can be criticized. But when such criticisms are publicly ventilated by the leader of our country, they become destructive. With respect, Prime Minister, if the intention is to improve the Integrity Commission's performance, public humiliation will not succeed. Madam Chairman, it is unfortunate if my comments have ruffled sensitivities, but I could not address the issues of integrity and principled behavior, which must be the prime concern of the Integrity Commission, without ventilating these fundamental and specific problems. They concern me deeply. You have asked for my views, and I have given them. Frankly, with some disappointment and regret, but without acrimony. An effective Integrity Commission is not only good for our country, it is necessary, not merely guidelines about what should be done. There must be the authority for effective implementation if it is to do it, get anything done. Without it, the IPLA is little more than a recitation of good intent and an exercise in futility. Thank you for your kind invitation. I wish you every success in achieving your commendable objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. You did not disappoint. This was, in fact, a very good session this morning in terms of the many recommendations you have made, including the fact that if several of the recommendations that you have put forward, if they don't work, then there's a need for us to have some sort of system in place that works, and therefore to focus on doing just that. So I want to open the floor and invite our participants, if they may have comments or if they have questions for Mr. Gordon. We would be very happy to facilitate all of it now. I know in particular, Dr. Terence Farrell has shared some very strong views on this very subject. He has addressed us here at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute on this matter. So I'm putting Dr. Farrell on notice that we are looking for him to to provide his take on some of these recommendations that Mr. Gordon has provided us with this morning.
Well, thanks very much, Kamala. There may be a little bit of delay in hearing me. I'm out of the country at the moment. So let me start off by thanking my very good friend Ken for his presentation. I knew what he was going to say because I've heard him speak on this topic before. I would just want to say a couple of things in this regard. One is that I have myself written about the Integrity in Public Life Act and the Commission over many years, starting back in 2006. In fact, when the Commission was restarted with the new legislation, the 2000 legislation, which was instituted by Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, and then the regulations were put in place in 2005, I wrote then that it was going to fail. And this is before anything had happened. And the reason for that is that, Ken talks about good intent. I am not too sure, quite frankly, that our legislators had any really good intent in setting up the Integrity Commission and in that new Integrity in Public Life Act. It was passed unanimously. Every single parliamentarian voted for it. So it was passed unanimously, but they did not have any really good intent in setting it up because they really set it up in a way that was guaranteed to fail. They did not want it to succeed. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that if as Ken is saying, and the recommendations which his commission put forward in 2014 in terms of the new amendments and so on, speak to what should have been there at the very outset, which is you wanted to have a commission which had strong investigative powers. One of the things I said at the outset is that the declaration of assets was a complete waste of time. Why are you asking people to put forward to declare these assets when, quite frankly, you could do nothing with them from the point of view of making them justiciable. They were useless from that point of view. And what we've seen is that people refuse to declare and nothing has happened. And as a result of that, the whole question of the efficacy of the commission has declined over time. People just simply don't take it on. The second thing that you needed to do in terms of the investigation was that you needed to put a strong investigative unit inside of the commission with, as I recommended at one point in time, a fiat from the DPP that would allow the commission to pursue people and to prosecute them with a blanket fiat from the DPP. The legislators or parliamentarians did not put that in place. Why? Because they didn't want any strong investigative unit inside of the Integrity Commission. They wanted to have the papi show and the mamagai of the declaration of assets and so on, and naming and shaming people by putting their names in the papers, but they did not really want to have a commission that was effective, that would operate in the same kind of way, for example, that the Singapore and Hong Kong and other serious countries have done with their integrity commissions. So the other point was that I made very early on, before we had even any of these controversies. This commission has been dogged with controversy from the very start, from the Gordon Dean Commission, which was the first one set up under the new legislation. Eric Sincere, come down the line, Ken Gordon, every single one, now down Professor Rajendra Lamlogan, who is now complaining about the fact that he has staff inside of there who are telling him that the Integrity Commission is not really independent. And it's supposed to be dependent on all of these other institutions of state and so on for what it wants to do. Why? Because, and they're right, you know, because that's how the thing was set up. It was set up to be ineffective. It was set up to fail. And I'm very sorry that, you know, I mean, people like him and my friend Eric Sincere and all of them go inside of there, Rajendra Ramlogan, I don't know him personally and so on, but they all go inside of there with these very good and noble intentions, but they are working with a piece of legislation that was flawed from the outset and which those parliamentarians did not want to work. And I'm sorry to have to say that because anybody who takes on that responsibility in that kind of context has to understand that this is what the legislation was doing. So that when Ken is saying, well, we put forward amendments 8 years ago and the cabinet has completely ignored it. Why do you think the cabinet has ignored it? The cabinet has ignored it because the cabinet does not want to have a strong, independent integrity commission with strong powers of investigation and prosecution. And I'm afraid that's my position, you know, on the matter.
It's a very consistent position.
Indeed.
And I think you ought to probably go back a little longer than 8 years. However, I am not sure that I would subscribe to the view that they set it out to fail, that you have so powerfully said. But I don't think they thought it through. Because it's one thing to put on what you want to get done, but unless you make it possible to give the authority to have it done, if you're really wasting time. I mean, I don't believe, for instance, that any of our presidents set out to take 2 years and so on, while an entire organization is waiting on them or somebody a whole year to give assent to something that is already there. So I don't believe people are deliberate. I just don't believe that it was taken seriously.
Well, that's the point, Ken. That's the point. They have never taken it seriously. And see, one thing that we could also point to is that every other institution that we have put in place that is attempts to address corruption, we set it up in exactly the same way. The Financial Intelligence Unit, for example, we take that intelligence unit and where do we put it? We put it in the Ministry of Finance. Are you serious? You put a financial intelligence unit, which is supposed to be tracking people in terms of money laundering and prosecuting those people inside the Ministry of Finance? You're not serious.
Terence, why don't we talk now about, okay, we've been saying these things for years and we're hearing it again this morning. What can we do to take it positive? The fact is, there is a document that is 8 years old that is formally presented and is within the cabinet. Is the first step not to try to get that accepted? So if that gets accepted, and if there are enough voices, I suspect it will. If that can get accepted, we have the beginning of teeth to move. But if in another 8 years, we'll be the same place, we only have 16 years, the document is only 16 years old. So let's see if we can urge the organization under whose auspices we're speaking now to succeed where we have failed.
And I think, Mr. Gordon, that is an excellent position, that we have to look at what can we do moving forward to help fix the situation, because we are seeing that the impact is really widespread. And one of the impact we see, Aline McCormy, one of our former PSs, has put on the chat. Aline, I want to invite you to come and share your point of view here with us, because I think it's critical that we see really how this is impacting on the quality of persons who then offer themselves for service at our state agencies. Aline?
Good morning to everyone. It has really, as I told the Integrity in Public Life analyst recently, I complete the form angry. And therefore, and I'm a person, as Mr. Gordon said, integrity is a way of life. Because I've had people tell me, you're putting too much information, but you put the information that they ask you, and then it's insufficient, and they query it, and what are you're putting your life out there. And is it fair to me? Is it fair to my family that, it's very possible that everything can just go? It is really intrusive. And I tell people, I remember attending a session in the UK, the International Public Administration Agency. And they dealt with the Integrity in Public Life Act in, the world, in other jurisdictions. And at that time, because it could have been in about 2000 and maybe 4 or somewhere there. At that time, the Trinidad and Tobago was one of the few in the region that had an Integrity in Public Life Act, and they commended us. But the number of persons we have under that act was more than bigger countries with, a lot more going on. So because I think we had, whether it's over 1,000 some, and possibly we have more now. And most of those large countries had like 100 or so, they look at the key people that they really need to possibly investigate, or who would be exposed. Because as I tell people, most time, permanent secretaries, you're not really involved in any corrupt act like that, because if one is found out, they were really very stupid. But apart from that, they are, it really is not, if once you're doing your job properly, there is really hardly any avenue. And if you have a question, you can ask and the person can write a report, but not bear your life on the forms. And, it really is bad. So that I've determined, as I said, I am not going back on any board. No, it is not worth it. It really isn't. And it's not about money, which they don't even pay you on time. It's not about that. It's just about mainly the Integrity in Public Life Act.
And Aline, are you aware of other persons who have expressed the same position as you?
Yes, and there are a number of people who just don't bother. And as I told you, they indicated, well, you're putting too much down. I said, but they ask you the question. And once they ask you the question, I answer it, But it's really a sad situation that we have found ourselves in. And I mean, I would support that cabinet, yes, look at those recommendations and take steps. But let me tell you, I have found in this country, and Mr. Gordon, I thank you for being very frank, it is, everything is delayed, everything takes time. I mean, I was in national security and the prisons legislation was in what? Was done in 1960 something or 18 something. And I don't know that it has been revised or if there's new legislation. So we're not serious about making the changes.
I think that is the one thing that we are likely to get absolute unanimity on. Because when you think of a structure existing, which has appointed a group of people to discharge its functions,
yeah,
and then make recommendations for improvement, and 8 years go by and you don't get an answer,
right?
you can only conclude that
Yes.
somebody there is not serious.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. I think this organization, you're new in the game. When you are, let's hear your voice. Let's hear joint voices. Right?
Yeah.
Whoever the people are in the commission now must again re-echo all this, because it is necessary. It can provide a very useful function. We've had so many near things while I was a member of the commission, but you just couldn't lock anything down because you didn't have the means of bringing the force, the authority to bear. You had to go in line, and that was 4 years before you did it. So, thank you for your contribution.
Yeah. And I see Simone Francois Whittier has a really good question in the chat. And Simone, I'm going to invite you in because it is exactly the question I myself was going to ask. And sometimes it becomes almost rhetorical, but we need to ask it and we need to keep delving until we find an answer. So Simone, can you join us now? And
sure.
Yes.
So
can you?
Yeah, I'm hoping the signal here is horrible. So I've been walking around my house trying to find a good signal. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good that we got in your video.
Okay. Okay, great. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Kamala, and of course, Mr. Gordon and Dr. Farrell. Excellent points. And I have to say, I agree with Dr. Farrell. Having been a public officer for most of my career, there's a certain degree of apathy. And it's something that I've noticed in the younger parts of the society too, because I had a mentor who was on the Integrity Commission once when I worked on campus. And it's something that is not really live to a great deal of the population. They don't really see the relevance to say that's for those people up there, you know, and all of them teething. And when you hear people like Dr. Farrell say, well, you know, they're not serious, we all have to agree. Because, you know, if you do something like that and you don't give it any teeth, and, you know, it's where it's housed, and those things are very deliberate. I'm sorry to say, it's not by chance. Nobody sits down, the drafters, or they sit down and do these things deliberately. Sometimes they're instructed, you know, and people who are here know probably more than I did, based on where I sat at the time I was in the ministry. So it's something that I often kind of question, even with my own children, who are now in that generation Z and the Alpha generation, who have absolutely no clue what these things are about. And I keep asking myself, how do I make them aware? So I'm asking everybody here, maybe we do need to think about how do we make the younger people aware of the consequences of sleeping on these kinds of issues and the lack of good governance. And we're all going to pay the price. We all are paying the price right now. So those are things that I think we need to bend our minds to in terms of solution finding, as Mr. Gordon had said. So thank you.
Well, I think that was a contribution rather than a question as such. Sure, we can go on from there. Yeah.
But it is a very important question to her. How do we get more young people engaged as well? Because they have a very strong voice. What we have seen is, despite the calls from yourself and persons of Dr. Farrell's caliber, there still has not been the kind of responses that we want to be able to set up a system that's going to allow us to feel that it is working in the right way for the country.
Go ahead. No, I'm just saying, Is it reasonable for us to expect the young people to generate that level of commitment and enthusiasm if our generation, a little past yours too in any case, but that's all right. But if the existing generation allows these things to happen without voicing vehemently
Yes.
that change is happening. If we want our young people to do the right thing, they've got to have a pattern, they've got to have something model. And I'm afraid that the models we're giving are the very best models.
Mhm.
So that I think what we have to do first is, yes, do all we can for young people, but recognize that the end game must be, they must see that what they're being told comes from a source which is itself doing something. The answer is, how do you take what instruments you have and make them work? And I come back to the point about Dr. Farrell's comment. Let us make a solid approach to the government again. If the government does not want an integrity commission, as he suspects, end it. But if you're going to have an integrity commission, let's have one that has the teeth and the commitment to get it done. Otherwise, we are all wasting time. So I'm not against what you're saying about the young people, because I agree. In fact, I would like to see them part and parcel of it, as I mentioned earlier. We need first to ensure that they're given an example to follow up. We're not just telling them, do the right thing without their seeing. We are showing them how the right thing should be done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You are absolutely right, and I think that is a good note for us to all think about and ponder on, because the reality is very often we come across some very difficult challenges and we keep thinking, well, okay, let's hope that the next generation will get it better. But you are absolutely right, Mr. Gordon. They too need the example, and we have a responsibility at this point in time to make sure that we are providing that example and providing the leadership to demonstrate that we all want to live in a better society. So I am inviting everyone who is here today, who has been able to benefit from hearing Mr. Gordon's call again. Let us all lend our voices to try to bring the change that's going to enable us to have a much better, whether it's the Integrity Commission, or as Mr. Gordon says, if that needs to be scrapped altogether and a new, very strong investigative system be set in place so that we can have something that is enforceable and working for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So it is now 12:27. We just 3 minutes away from ending this first session for today. I want to thank everyone for their contribution, those of you who shared on the chat as well. Please note too that we have put our feedback form on the chat. We'd like each of you please to click on that link and give us your feedback. It's important for us to know, one, that we are meeting your expectations, but there are also room for recommendations from you in terms of what you need us at CCGI to do that can help us improve in how we do things as well. So we are looking forward to that information from you too. Mr. Gordon, I can't thank you enough. This really is so important.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and good luck.